At the 1996 Summer Olympics, 124 runners towed the start line of the marathon. 26.2 miles of grueling competition and dozens of lead changes later, Josiah Thugwane of South Africa won Olympic gold with a time of 2 hours, 12 minutes, and 36 seconds, a mere 3 seconds ahead of South Korea's Lee Bong-ju. Imagine that. After years of training, days of race planning, and thousands of steps across the hot Atlanta asphalt, the difference between winning and losing came down to 3 freaking seconds. It remains the closest marathon finish in Olympic history. Last year, Alpharad hosted the inaugural Nuzlocke auction draft race between myself and 4 other racers. After bidding on a series of auction Pokémon, we were tasked with racing each other to beat a hardcore Nuzlocke of a modified version of Pokémon Emerald. And despite maintaining a lead for much of the race, when the dust settled at the end, I found myself in a distant second place. It wasn't even close. I was crushed because I knew I could do better. So when Alpharad decided that he wanted to host a second Nuzlocke auction draft race just a month later, I jumped at the chance for redemption. The format was largely the same, save for one significant change. This time, a rule was hard-coded into the game where for every gym leader fight, the Pokemon that's out on the field at the end of the battle dies. This meant that you needed to draft at least 9 Pokemon to beat the game, and 14 if you wanted a full team for the Pokemon League. It also meant that you couldn't rely on sweeping through the game with just 1 or 2 overpowered Pokemon. The idea was that this would make it so that we'd be relying less on speedrunning skills and more on our Nuzlocking abilities. At least theoretically. By the end of the draft, I had purchased 17 Pokemon, focusing specifically on those that I thought could hit fast and hard before valiantly dying against one of the 8 Hoenn gym leaders. I also sprinkled in some general heavy hitters to ensure that I had a solid team for the Elite Four. And speaking of, the last 5 draft picks were all Paradox Pokemon that could only be used in the Pokemon League. Since I still had a ton of cash at that point, I was able to score both Slitherwing and Iron Bundle. My team was beyond loaded, but a good draft only gets you so far. I still needed to execute. I knew that overworld movements weren't my strong suit. I can't ride a bike to save my damn life, and there's not a chance in hell I was gonna dodge every optional trainer, so my battle strategies needed to be not only flawless, but also extremely efficient. One of my biggest mistakes in the previous race was not taking advantage of setup moves, which at the cost of just a turn or 2 at the start of the battle, could easily save you literal minutes later in the battle if it meant chaining one-hit knockouts that might otherwise allow the enemy to use healing items or set up time-wasting weather. After a short 15-minute prep period, the race had started and all 5 competitors began the mad dash towards Rustboro City and the fight against the first gym leader Roxanne. From the box, where all 17 of my encounters await, I grab Archon, Abra, Cottony, Hatena, Gibble, and Mincino. Since operating the PC is fairly time-consuming, my goal is to get as far as possible with these 6 Pokemon alone. Likewise, since using the Cap Candy to level up each encounter is also a time-consuming process, I make sure to only level up those that are relevant to the current split. In this case, it's Archon, Mincino, and Cottony. Archon is an unbelievably strong Pokemon for this point in the game and can easily one-shot just about every Pokemon that any random trainer will throw at me. Though very few are mandatory, I obviously run into my fair share of optionals, including the worst possible one, Bugcatcher Lyle, since he has 4 stinking Wurmples. Still, all things considered, we've made it to Rustboro City in reasonable time, and my Roxanne strategy is basically flawless. Cottony uses Mega Drain to kill the first Geodude and whittle away at Nosepass. Then I switch to Cincino, who knows Technician Bullet Seed to finish off Nosepass and also kill Geodude, becoming the first Force death of the run. Thanks for the sacrifice, bud. With the Team Aqua and Magma storylines removed from this version of the game, there's literally 0 mandatory trainers between Roxanne and Brawly. I make the decision to take care of delivering Mr. Sone's letter to Steven before the fight, so I've got a slight but rather arbitrary deficit on a few of my competitors by the time I'm talking to Brawly. Fortunately, Kadabra can just one-shot Machop and 2-shot Meditite. Against Makuhita, I make sure to switch to Hatena, who becomes our sacrificial lamb as we earn the second gym badge. So now we're off to Mauville City via Slateport. Since we have immediate access access to both bikes in this game, I'm able to bypass the several otherwise mandatory fights on Route 110. It does risk running into optionals on Cycling Road, but with some overly safe movements, I make it through unscathed. Mauville City marks my very first stop at a Pokémon Center. Up until now, I've actually avoided healing my Pokémon at all, since engaging with Chatty Cathy is a waste of precious seconds if I don't need to do so. Here, I switch out the dead Hatena and Minccino for Magikarp and Shinx, the latter of whom evolves into Luxio and is my planned sacrifice for the fight against Watson. But the thing about plans is that they're meant to be ignored and adjusted on the fly. That's a saying, right? My main heavy hitter for the Watson fight is Gabite, who with Bulldoze can pick up easy kills against Watson's first 3 electric types. The plan was to then switch to Luxio and finish off the Electrike, but at the last second, I decide to instead switch back to Gabite and take the final KO with him. As a result, the switch to Luxio, and even bringing him out of the box in the first place, was a massive time sink, but saving the Lion Cub here gives me a better matchup against Winona and Juan later in the run. And besides, using Gabite just feels gross. Hey! What's your problem?
Oh, I don't have a problem now that Gabite's dead.
You know, it's free to be nice, Flygon.
Yeah, well, so is worldwide shipping when you order from the sponsor of this video, Holzkern.
Wait, what?
What?
I don't understand what's going on here.
Well, I don't understand how Holzkern can make such beautiful products from wood and other natural materials, and yet here we are.
I'm gonna leave.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'd expect. Just like I'd expect every Holzkern product to meet a high standard of quality thanks to their small quantity manufacturing backed by a 2-year guarantee.
Look, you all know that Holzkern is an Austrian accessories company that specializes in watches and jewelry. And of course, you also know that St. Patrick's Day is known as the watch-giving holiday, a tradition that dates back hundreds of thousands of years. So you're in luck that with my code Flygon, you can get 15% off site-wide just in time to get your Patty Pal the watch of their dreams, like the Antoninus made from lead, wood, and marble, which is my personal favorite. I even wore it at my own wedding. Alternatively, if you feel like heathenously bucking the ageless watch-giving St. Patrick's Day tradition, you can surprise your Patty Pal with a gorgeous piece of jewelry, like the composition necklace made from blue nacre and gold, which is one of Dana's favorites to wear. And products typically arrive in just 2 to 5 business days, so your Patty Pal won't have to wait long for their unique, one-of-a-kind gift straight from Vienna. Thanks so much to Holzkern for sponsoring this video and for making St. Patrick's Day one to remember. Now, let's get back to the race. Before leaving Mauville City, I make sure to stop back in the Pokémon Center to exchange Gabite's corpse for my Roly-Coly. And then it's a race to Lava Ridge City. At this point, Peachal, Wacko, and I were neck and neck. There was no time for mistakes, and unlike in the last race, I made it to Flannery without running into a single optional. Yay! Flannery is the freest fight yet. Gyarados can learn Waterfall and Rain Dance via the in-party move relearner, so she's free to sweep through Numel, Camerupt, and Torkoal, even clutching up through an Attract to do so with optimal speed. Slugma remains, so Karkle becomes our now almost methodical sacrifice as she takes the final KO with a single smackdown. That lightning-fast victory put me ever so slightly into the lead. In Mauville City, I stopped by the Pokémon Center for a quick heal and to swap out some party members. Karkle and Archon go to the box, Tyrogue and Ghastly join the team. The former evolves into Hitmonchan, which is not exactly my preference, but he'll have to be my answer to Norman, who's way back in Petalburg City. Along the way, I run into an optional, which chips away at my lead to the point where Peachal and I are once again more or less tied. Wacko's having some trouble with Flannery, meaning that for the time being at least, this has become a two-way race for the lead. Hitmonchan can use Drain Punch to slice through Norman's gym trainers like a feast of perfectly cooked fish fillets, and do so without needing to return to the Pokémon Center between fights. Against Norman, he can set up with Power Up Punch and use Detect to play around Slacking's loafing turns, so he gets a solo sweep under his belt before heading off to the great beyond. And as flawless as that was, it wasn't the fastest Norman fight in the world, allowing Peachal to gain a small but meaningful lead. The man was playing out of his mind and performing far better than in our debut race. But I still had my not-so-secret weapon. You notice how I'm holding on to my now under-leveled Kadabra? That's because he knows the move Teleport, which lets me instantly travel to the last Pokemon Center I visited. And since I intentionally didn't step foot in the Petalburg City Pokemon Center, this lets me warp straight back to Mauville City, bypassing the long trek and potential optional trainers along the way. Funny enough, I never actually even drafted Abra. Instead, I got him in a special trading round at the end of the draft, electing to trade away my Toxel to none other than Pichal, who did desperately need an electric-type Pokemon. Ironically, he was bringing that very same Toxel onto his team at the exact moment I was using Kadabra to leapfrog into the lead. But now that I had the lead, would I be able to keep it? Pichal could easily make up time in this split with better overworld movements and quicker victories against the few mandatory trainers, especially now that I had given him a solid answer against Winona. I really couldn't afford to make any mistakes.
Oh, Swift Swim! Oh my god, no! Oh my god, I totally forgot!
Well, that's obviously very bad. I mean, not only do I lose valuable time on this fight, Archon's unexpected death also means I won't be able to use him as my planned sacrifice against Winona. So I'll have to use another Pokemon instead, which then affects my plans for the rest of the game. Remember, I need a minimum of 14 Pokemon to get to the Elite Four with a full team of 6. Since I only drafted 17 Pokemon, I've got very little room for unanticipated deaths. That mistake and the subsequent fallout could very well give Pichal the chance to reclaim the lead. But I really can't think about that. I just have to adjust and keep going. After cycling out my team in the Fortree City Pokemon Center to prepare for the next few splits, I begin the fight against Winona mere seconds ahead of Pichal. Luxray instantly kills her Swablu and baits in Altaria, granting a safe switch to Gyarados on an Earthquake, who can then use Ice Fang to get the KO on the Dragon Dancing Ace, as well as against Winona's Tropius. Waterfalls then take out Skarmory, so all that's left is Pelipper, which gives me the opportunity to try something sneaky. I switch to Luxray on a whiffed Supersonic and go for Volt Switch, planning to take the KO and bring my Haunter in as the required sacrifice. But apparently, if you take the last KO of the battle with a Volt Switch, you do not get to switch out. Instead, the battle just immediately ends, and as a result, it is Luxray who dies. That's not exactly what I had planned, but at the very least, before she died, Luxray did manage to lock in and dodge that Supersonic on the Switch, something that could not be said about Pichal's Pokemon, and as a result, I've managed to barely hold on to my lead. Just like in the previous draft race, the Lily Cove department store houses a range of items needed to evolve all sorts of Pokemon that would otherwise be impossible to obtain. But because accessing the department store requires completing an optional rival fight, I intentionally drafted Pokemon that wouldn't require that detour. Other than Haunter, I guess, who could have benefited from a link cable. Also, side note, there were a handful of evolution items in Petalburg City, which is where I was able to snag the Sunstone that will eventually evolve Cottony into Whimsicott. Now, Pichal did need to detour to the Lily Cove department store in order to evolve Cubfu into his late-game sweeper of choice, the Dark-type Urshifu. So by that point, I had already plowed through all of Tate and Liza's gym trainers with Sharpedo and started the battle for the 7th gym badge. This was easily my largest lead up until this point, but the race was far from over. Fortunately, with 2 dark types in the form of Sharpedo and Grimmsnarl, I had a nearly guaranteed victory over Tate and Liza. A double up of Sucker Punch and Liquidation kill Claydol as Xatu goes for a Calm Mind. I attempt the same double up to KO Solrock, but Grimmsnarl Sucker Punch fails, meaning that I lose a bit of momentum here as Xatu goes for a Confuse Ray, which is healed with a strategically plucked Person Berry, and Solrock sets up with Sunny Day. So on the 3rd turn, I kill Solrock with a Crunch, and then after Xatu sets up a second Calm Mind, Grimmsnarl's False Surrender gets a 3rd KO. All that remains is Lunatone, so I make sure to switch Sharpedo into Kadabra, ensuring that he'll be our sacrificial death, as Grimmsnarl takes the final KO with another False Surrender a few turns later. Just one gym leader remains, so after a quick team swap where I get Whimsicott and Haxorus, I'm off to Sootopolis City with a solid, albeit dwindling lead over Pichal. But then I make the single biggest mistake of the run. I forget to grab the HM for Dive, meaning that I need to go all the way back to Mossdeep City to talk to Steven. And worse still, instead of flying, which is accessible via the menu regardless of whether you have a Pokemon that knows fly or not, I foolishly surf all the way back. This was a boneheaded play. It's completely my fault, I have no excuses, and with that massive time sink, Pichal was suddenly able to regain the lead. Was that what this race would come down to? Forgetting to get the HM for Dive? All the Nuzlocking skills in the world can't save me from such a stupid mistake. But I'll tell you what can, Pichal making an equally stupid mistake. Because this guy manages to mess up one of the ice puzzles in Juan's gym. So, just like that, it's basically all tied up again, and I'm back into striking distance. Jokes aside, it's hard to describe the pressure of a razor-thinly contested race like this. By the time Pichal and I had arrived in Sootopolis City, we had been drafting and playing Pokemon for 4 hours straight. That level of fatigue, combined with the stress of on-the-fly optimization, was clearly taking its toll on the both of us, so mistakes were bound to happen. My fight against Juan is extremely straightforward. With a Person Berry to avoid Sweet Kiss confusion, my Haxorus can set up a Dragon Dance and then Dragon Claw her way through his team. Or rather she would, if she didn't have the ability Rivalry, which nerfs her attack when fighting against male Pokemon. The result is that Kingdra doesn't get killed by our +1 Dragon Claw and fires off an Ice Beam in return. Thankfully, there's no crit or freeze, but it means that Haxorus cannot continue her sweep as Celio comes in third. So I have to switch to Rotom Wash. With Shock Waves, they KO Celio and Crawdont. And then finally, they rip a Hydro Pump against Whiscash. I switch to Haunter to lay a Curse in the hopes that Whiscash will opt for another Amnesia, but since he goes for the KO with Water Pulse instead, I need to bring in Grimmsnarl to take the final KO of the fight. Thanks for all the help, buddy. Rest well. Pichal managed to get nearly a clean sweep against Juan with Toxtricity, proving that our trade was indeed mutually beneficial. I didn't think that my fight against Juan was particularly slow, but evidently it was slow enough for me to once again lose the lead. So this race was now coming down to how fast we could get through Victory Road and start the Pokemon League. I knew that Sharpedo could more or less one-shot every single mandatory trainer, but I once again face a not-so-insignificant setback when I run out of repels, forcing me to detour to Mossdeep City. Thankfully, I run out just before entering Victory Road, so it's not as big a deal as it could be, though Pichal is playing with so much efficiency that I quickly feel victory slipping away for a second time. Was I cursed to be the eternal second place finisher in every single one of these draft races? I get a moment of hope when Pichal runs into an optional that I do not. This gains me a little bit of time, but even with that minor mistake, he's made it to the Pokemon League with a roughly 20-second advantage. We both still need to do at least some prep for this final challenge, but where Pichal only needed to bring out and level up Fluttermane, I needed to bring out Slitherwing and Iron Bundle, so that 20-second lead becomes a 40-second lead. If I had any hopes of closing that gap, I needed to somehow beat the Elite Four faster than Pichal could with his Fluttermane, a famously slow and methodical Pokemon. This was looking bad. Whimsicott is able to Moonblast his way through Sydney's first 3 dark types, but a low roll against Shiftry causes a massive halt in momentum as he gets off a Swagger. I gotta switch out, and though it doesn't seem like much time lost, with Fluttermane clicking Dazzling Gleam 5 times for the dub on Pichal's side, his lead has expanded ever so slightly. I don't even bother healing before facing off against Phoebe. I simply switch my lead to Gyarados, who's gonna be relying on a few Dragon Dances to sweep with Crunch. Her Dusclops makes things tricky with Confuse Ray, but by risking some hits in Confusion, Gyarados clutches up and does indeed sweep through her team. Though yet again, it's still not as fast as Pichal sweeping through with Wicked Blows. So, for the second fight in a row, I had lost ground and it was looking like this was a guaranteed victory for Pichal. His Urshifu would surely sweep through Glacia's ice types, Fluttermane would destroy Drake's dragon types, and as long as he got off a bulk up once or twice, Urshifu would also be able to sweep through Wallace. There was so little room to make up time. but I had to try. Slitherwing is my fighting type answer into Glacia's ice types, though with superpower instead of close combat, I can't just spam a super strong fighting type move into her 5 Pokemon. Instead, I need to use low sweep on a few of them and save superpower for wall rain. The result is a clean, but not exactly efficient sweep. By the time I was starting the fight against Drake, Pichal was already onto his final Pokemon, Kingdra. But he was actually having some trouble there. With Fluttermane taking too much damage against Salamence, he needed a switch, and that allowed Kingdra to set up with Dragon Dance. In the end, Drake's Kingdra has an atrocious moveset, so he was almost certainly still completely fine here, but the time needed to whittle away at Kingdra as he set up the time-consuming Dragon Dances was enough for me to unleash my most expensive draft purchase, Iron Bundle. The ultra speedy, ultra powerful ice type is free to fire off monstrous freeze dries into Drake's dragons. And since freeze dry is also super effective to water type Pokemon, Iron Bundle can even one-shot Kingdra, instantly bypassing the otherwise time-consuming wall. So in one single battle, I had almost completely closed the gap on Pichal. He was just starting the fight against Wallace as I was leaving Drake's chamber. But where Pichal needed to set up Urshifu with Bulk Up, I was once again going to rely on Iron Bundle sweeping with Freeze Dry. It was my only play. It was all coming down to this last fight. How fast could Iron Bundle beat Wallace? And would it be fast enough?
I really hope this one-shots the... It might not one-shot the fish, the Wailord. Come on, buddy. Come on, buddy. With a crit! Let's go, Iron B. Ludi, let's go! Whiscash! Give me Gyarados next, baby! Come on, come on, come on, come on, come on. Give me Gara, give me Gara, give me Gary, give me Gary, give me Gary, give me Gary. Tentacruel. Okay. You're gonna Toxic. We're just gonna two-shot you. And then it's just Milo. Oh, what the freeze! Voice crack! Let's go! Plot armor! Plot armor! Plot armor! Woo! Broken mechanic, baby! Gara, show me Gara. Show me Dose. Boom! Another! 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 Give me another! Give me another! Give me another! Give me another! Come on. Okay, Milo. Okay, Milo. Here's what you want to do, Chief. You want to get frozen. You want to get frozen. Another crit. That obviously didn't matter. Come on. You want to get frozen here. You want to get frozen here, Milo. Milo, you want to get frozen here. You want to get frozen. I want you to frozen. Let's go. Let's see it. Let's see it. Let's see it. That's not enough. Surf isn't going to do shit, though. Okay, it will if it crit. That's fine. That's fine. That's fine. Bundler, go down. Or crit. If you crit here, we definitely win. Ah. Okay, that's fine. We Scott. Surf is fine. Bye, Bundle. We got crit. That's fine. We go Scott. I hope this kills. I really hope this kills, bro. Come on. Boom! Okay, last mon is down on Wallace.
Oh my god, you guys do not understand. Are you serious?
Did I get it?
You did. You
How
won
close?
1 HP Gyarados on you off the side.
Oh my god.
Congrats.
In the end, I had done to Pichal what Wacko did to me in the first draft race. Achieved victory in the 11th hour. The difference between winning and losing was borderline unbelievably thin. Over the course of the last 2 hours, any number of tiny changes could have made the difference. After watching back Pichal's playthrough, it's obvious that he played so well. His draft strategy was fantastic, and other than one tiny ice puzzle, his overworld movements were objectively notably better than mine. Neither Pichao nor I played perfectly, and we both got our fair share of lucky and unlucky moments throughout the race. But the fact that it was so close is a testament to how much every decision and every RNG roll matters when playing Pokemon. This time, I came out on top, but there's no telling what future draft races will hold. As always, thank you all so much for watching, and stay tuned for more Nuzlocke content. Until then, though, remember to always, always, always play around the critical hit.